Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Zero Stars podcast. My name is Chris, and I am here with my friend, fellow Smashing Pumpkins fan, and your co-host, Jesse. How are you, Jesse?
Hey, I'm pretty good today.
Yeah?
Ready to get into it.
You ready to get into it? Well, let's not bury the lead. So today's episode is actually quite exciting because there's been a lot that has happened in the Smashing Pumpkins world over the past few weeks, kind of in the wake of the North American leg of the World is a Vampire tour. We got something pretty special last week. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. It was maybe about 3 weeks ago. It was like a Wednesday morning. Jesse and I were each at work. And I all of a sudden get a little bit of a buzz on my phone from Madame Zuzu's that had just announced this Siamese Dream 30th anniversary Towers record collab pop-up at Madame Zuzu's and a special acoustic recreation of a Tower Records set that the band had done the day of the record release 30 years ago. Now, I saw this immediately and I thought to myself, all right, damn it. I can't make it to Chicago, but I'm going to text my best friend, Jessie, to see if she could potentially make it to Chicago. So I sent her this text, and Jessie, you can retell your side of the story, but I sent you this text.
Yeah, we were like really in the middle of a busy time at work, and for some reason I looked over immediately as you texted and saw the notification, and something in me was like, fuck everything that's going on, just see what's up. And I hadn't even fully registered what was going on, but my husband was like, just go deal with it. Like, here's my credit card, just whatever. And it happened so fast. I was able to get like second row tickets. I don't even know how it happened, and I was like so stunned. But major props to you for notifying me on that, because otherwise, I think it sold out so quickly, it definitely wouldn't have happened for me.
Right. Well, hey, we look out for each other. You're one of my closest friends, period, let alone my closest Smashing Pumpkins fans. So I'm glad that you and your husband were able to get tickets and yeah, like they did sell out immediately and there weren't very many tickets. I mean, and we can talk about this a little bit more as we go on, but Madame Zuzu's is not a huge venue. So I believe they had about 100, 120 tickets per set, and there was a 6 p.m. set and a 9 p.m. set. And you ended up getting the later set, correct?
Yeah, that was just what my instinct. I was like, go for the later one.
Okay.
So
So, there were 250-ish tickets, give or take. And you ended up getting two of them. You got second row, so that's great. And the funny part, as you were kind of describing, is we had no idea what we were really getting ourselves into here because it was such an unexpected announcement. It happened so quickly. There was no really, there was no big hoopla around it until literally it just dropped kind of out of nowhere. So the way that the event was described on the Madame Zuzu's website was this idea of recreating a Towers record experience. So Tower Records, we actually had to look this up the last time we recorded. They basically haven't had a brick and mortar store in like 15 years or something like that. They declared bankruptcy. And for some reason, whoever owns that IP decided to license it to Billy Corgan for a week. But
I did not know they were still an entity at this point. So surprise.
somebody owns that IP. So the way that they kind of sold this was that they wanted to do a Tower Records pop-up because on the eve before the record release back in 1993, the band had gone to a Tower Records in Chicago. They played an acoustic set kind of at 11 p.m. around midnight, right before leading up to the release. And it became kind of this iconic moment. The recording was broadcast on radio. There was heavily bootlegged. So what they wanted to do was to recreate the Tower Records experience. They were going to have some pop-up. They were going to have a pop-up for a few days at Madame Zuzu's, where they were going to have specially designed merch from the Pumpkins perspective and from Tower Records perspective. And they said that they were going to recreate the Tower Records set, which was essentially the Siamese Dream songs, a handful of them, and then Shiva and I Am One. So that was kind of what we were getting ourselves into. Now, before we kind of get into the detail of you actually hopping in your car and driving 6 hours to Chicago,
It was more like 8, but
Oh, it was that long? I thought you were much closer. Oh,
I
that's a
was
long
like,
drive.
I don't do I have like no sense of where I am at any given moment, and I just go on autopilot and let
Yeah.
my husband like
Yeah.
drive. So I was like, oh yeah, it's not that bad. It's like 555 miles. So
Oh God. Okay. So multiply that by 1.6 for kilometers. That's a lot. Yeah, that's a 7, 8 hour drive. That's a lot. Um, so but before you headed onto this drive and got your makeup done and chose your outfit and enjoyed the experience at Zuzu's, what was your initial reaction about this celebratory Siamese Dream event?
So I think we can like discuss a little bit about how big of a deal this album is within the fan community and like sort of the demand to hear the songs for it. And I like instantly knew it was going to be a coveted ticket
Hmm.
just based on that. For me personally, I'm not like a Siamese zombie.
Hmm.
Nothing against the record or anything, but I came into the fandom, I guess, like during Melancholy, and I was like 10 or 11. So when I would watch Euphoria and sort of like look onto that Gish and Siamese Dream era,
Hmm.
it seemed worlds away to me as like a child because, time is warped when you're a child, and just a few years can seem like an eternity.
Right.
I guess I just didn't connect with that era on a personal level due to that. So nothing against the music. It's just I don't have the same level of like sentimentality and like kind of like idolating that era as some others might personally.
Sure, and I think that that's fair because, and I'm going to say that I agree with you to a pretty great extent. You're a couple of years older than I am, so I got into the Pumpkins around the Melancholy era as well, but I was like 6 years old, right? So I'd seen Bullet on Much Music at the time, and it was exciting. And I had an older cousin who had Melancholy, so I remember listening to it when I was at his house. But I really, I'm going to say, dove deep into the fandom in the Machina era. So I also retroactively experienced Gish and Siamese Dream, and I didn't experience it in real time. I love the record. I think that it is iconic in so many ways. I think that it is genre defining in so many ways. It is something that is very exciting and interesting to me as a musician as well, in terms of wanting to recreate a lot of those guitar tones and how, like, the way that it was produced. There's so many great things about it. And I'll also go as far as to say that Mayonnaise is like a song that resonated with me as a young, depressed, trying to figure out, bullied kid, trying to figure out my place in the world. That song meant a lot to me as well. But I also think that you and I both strike a very clear balance between appreciating nostalgia and also accepting the current state of Billy's artistry as he continues on. Because you and I, again, lived through the autumn record cycle in real time. There was a lot of high moments that we still talk about. And so I think that I'm also aligned with you in that this was great. I agree. The celebration is great. It's exciting. But I was also not one of those people that was like fanboying and geeking out and squealing at the idea of doing a Siamese Dream anniversary show. And then we can even get further with an announcement about a potential future tour. Again, I was just
We'll touch on that,
yeah, we'll
but
touch on that later. But I agree with you is that I also didn't. I understand why the fandom feels the way that they do because it's a moment in time, right? Like the individuals that were 14, 15, 16, 17 when Siamese Dream came out, that was their record when they were a teenager. And I look back to my teenager records and I'll still forever be nostalgic about those as well, right? So I get it, but it also wasn't it wasn't like whoop-de-doo for me, I guess.
right. I was excited to sort of experience it, but and also I think it was a great little piece of fan service considering I don't want to use the word disdain, but Billy's sort of feelings about, I mean, he labeled the Siamese Dream fans Siamese zombies, which like I don't necessarily even disagree with,
Right.
but there's a level of emotion intention sort of there, maybe between the artist and the fans with regard to that album. And maybe him feeling, even though in a way, I understand it's kind of like the birth of their sound. It's really when they exploded into themselves, I think. And
Okay.
though every album is distinct, I mean, there is a certain, like, I guess, flavor that like came up with that album.
Yeah, and I think that you raise an interesting point, and it's going to be actually a pretty good segue. This idea of fan service and giving the fans what they want, given that there is at least some element of antagonism between Billy and the fans, at least to a certain extent, right? Like, I mean, we can go back to Block of the Night.
And it is a two-way street, I think,
Yes.
in a lot of cases.
Yes. So yes, there is a fan service element to it to kind of satisfy that desire. But let's also not ignore that at the end of the day, the Smashing Pumpkins as an entity is a profit-oriented entity. And there were many opportunities for profit generation by doing this event. And we can talk about all those as we go on. So leading up to the event, there were a couple of teasers. The biggest one being some teasers about the merch drop. So they had made it very clear that there was going to be a very specific merch drop that was only going to be available at the pop-up and only available to those not in Chicago during the live stream. So they announced that they were going to live stream the second set, the 9 p.m. set, via this platform called Veeps, and it was going to be a free live stream. And during that live stream, you could go and buy that merch. Of course, because they wanted to sell as many Super Zero shirts as possible, they ended up extending it for another 48 hours or something like that. But they did kind of make this announcement. So as part of this merch drop, they had a couple of shirts, a couple of tees, and some hats and beanies and stuff like that. What was your initial reaction of the merch drop?
A little underwhelmed.
Okay.
Uh, I had like wanted a Super Slut reproduction shirt for like quite a long time, and I know you can get bootlegs and whatnot. Like I'm aware of that, but
And to be clear, that shirt was a shirt that Billy wore during the era. It was a long sleeve tee with like essentially a Supergirl logo on the chest with Super Slut on each one of the sleeves.
yeah, and I wasn't a particular fan of the reimagining and like the Super Zero moniker. I mean, to me it was a bit cringe. I bought the shirt, like let's not get shit twisted. Like I'm a clown in that way. However, um and like I guess there might have been some IP issues maybe with reproducing the original or whatnot. But I will say, and I showed you a screenshot of this, I am now, because we're in like an AI takeover apparently, being pushed like advertisements for a brand of, I guess, hair care called Super Zero. So I don't know, maybe they'll be in trouble there, but I just thought that was funny.
That's funny. I agree with you. The merch was not something that I was particularly excited about. And in a past episode, we've talked about the fact that, again, I'm not in charge of digital marketing and merchandising. I mean, there is a person within the SP world that has that as their official title. So it's not my job, but I don't know that I've been particularly enthused by any of the designs. I didn't love the Super Zero design. And the other design that was, I'm going to say, the most prominent was, I've called it Satanic Hellman's and I've called it Devil Mayo, but I guess both are essentially the same thing. It's an iconic Hellman's blue lid mayo jar with a 666 printed on it in place of a label, tipping the hat to the 666 shirt that Billy had worn during the era. I think probably most notably when the band did an acoustic performance at MTV, where the Cherub Rock performance was on Euphoria. That's probably the most recognizable moment. That design was on a shirt, it was on a tote bag, and it was also on the poster, which ended up looking like it was designed by a 12-year-old on MS Paint.
MS Paint, yeah. We got Game Boy printer and MS Paint with this merch. Like it's serving a lot of 8-bit. I'm sorry, like I don't want to sound like a hater, but
Right. And I, again, I don't want to sound like a hater either, but I didn't particularly love it. That being said, in advance of the show, I did tell Jesse very emphatically and explicitly that if there's an opportunity for those signed posters to be acquired, that she has to acquire me one. And we'll get back to that a little bit later. But I set the stage from the very beginning that the one thing that I wanted from this show was a signed poster. And I guess it was a couple of reasons. I think one, like I have Billy autographs, I have James autographs, I have Jimmy autographs. But then to have them all in one place in something that I could hang up in a wall on a wall, like I have a I don't know, a man cave type of a room where I have my record player, my guitars and posters and stuff like that. I wanted something for the wall. So even though I didn't love the devil mayo design, and the fact that now that I, spoiler alert, I did get a poster. The fact that I'm actually going to put up a satanic jar of mayonnaise in my home is kind of funny to me. But it was something that was important to me. So
And what I liked about that actually is that it was just sort of the core original members who signed it,
yes, that was part of
which
it too.
that I thought was a nice touch.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so then let's now fast forward to the events. So you had driven out on the Saturday, because again, it was a very long drive. And then on that Saturday evening, you had just gotten into Chicago. I think you were at the hotel at the time. And I was actually at like my local neighborhood poker game. Like I just go and I play cards. And you had sent me a text that said, there's a merch drop. And I went through my emails. I was trying to get balanced playing cards at the time with trying to go through my emails and find this merch drop. And I couldn't find anything. And it ended up being that anybody who bought a ticket got advanced access to purchase the merch. And in that moment, I basically was hyperventilating at the poker table and basically said, Jesse, I don't care. Buy me this poster. Buy me this poster. Where's the link? Give me the link. I was losing my mind. And the next thing I knew, you were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you sent me a screenshot with it having been acquired for me. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
I could sense your panic through somehow like the airwaves, because if I wanted something that bad from this band, I probably would have felt the same way.
Yeah.
And as your anxiety was building, I was like in the process of adding that shit to my cart. So
I knew you were. Like I knew you weren't going to let me down. We've known each other for 15 years now. I knew you weren't going to let me down. So the poster was acquired. Very exciting. I ended up winning that night at poker. Like I actually took home like quite a bit of money that night. So I thought to myself, all right, the poster paid for itself. It was great. And we can talk about the pricing of that later when we talk about the merch details. But I ended up winning. I got the poster, and then you ended up, I think you and your husband just ended up having a lazy night, ordered some takeout, and then kind of got yourself ready for the next day, right?
We did like a stalkery drive-by of Madame Zuzu's, and it kind of seemed like not many people were there, and I'm like, I'll just save this for tomorrow.
Fair enough. So then now let's get to Sunday. So Sunday morning, you get up, you get ready. Talk about how the day started and when you ended up kind of making your way to Zuzu's.
Well, we went, like I just for some reason was like, I knew it closed at what, like 3. They were closing early to like set up for the show.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just go like an hour or so before they close and kind of get a gauge of things, because I'd never been in. You and I have only been to the old Madame Zuzu's 1.0.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to just get like sort of the layout of things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, shop the merch drop that we complained incessantly about.
All right, so let's start with that. So you showed up. How busy was it? Like, was it pretty packed, or was it
pretty busy at that time? Yeah, it was pretty packed.
Yeah, and then you went in and you looked at the merch. So what was the setup? Was the vibe cool? What did you end up buying? Did you see a lot of people also shopping, or what was it like from the merch specific angle?
Yeah, a lot of people were shopping the merch. It was a pretty small setup, just, a table, and it kind of like what you would see at a show.
Okay. And so what did you end up buying?
I ended up getting the Super Zero, the derided Super Zero shirt, and I had to get the Satanic Mayo shirt as well
Oh, you
because
got a nail
that was
shirt too. I didn't
the
know
icon
that.
of the event,
Nice.
like
Right.
it or not. Like I wanted to get something to commemorate
Yes.
um the experience. So
Perfect. Yeah, no, I didn't know you actually got the Super Zero shirt. That's funny. Have you worn either of them?
no, I actually just kept them in the bag and put them in my closet.
It's a totem of the event, so that's great. Um, so then the other thing that we had talked about and something that we had kind of been laughing about before. So just for context, you and your husband are in the food service industry. You own you own a number of food trucks in your town. And I'm a big food person. I travel for food. I love to eat. I love to cook. I have a food blog. Like it's a big part of my life as well. So one thing we both talked about was Madame Zuzu's 2.0 has a much deeper and diversified food menu, than Zuzu's 1.0. And I want to say maybe about a month or two ago, I was looking through the Zuzu's website and I looked on Goldbelly. So Goldbelly is this food service that basically delivers meal kits from restaurants kind of across the US. And it was kind of something that was launched, really kind of got really popular during the pandemic. And we had seen that, you could buy Grandma JoJo's meatball sub meal kit from Goldbelly, or you could buy some cookies or something like that. But the one thing that really made me kind of laugh, and I think gave us a lot of fodder, was the carrot lox toast.
Yeah,
So,
we did a real deep dive into that because, it lists on the website down to the ounce of what you're getting.
yep. So you're getting
So we did
5.2
the math.
ounces.
We did the math on it.
You get 5.2 ounces of carrot, some vegan cream cheese, some sourdough bread, and some capers. And I think it was $85 for 4 servings, which to me is for what I just described, 5.2 ounces of carrot. And my favorite thing in the world is Jessie actually took her food scale and measured and weighed 5.2 ounces of carrot for me to have a visual understanding of what 5.2 carrots is. And I think it's like 2.5 medium or 1.5 medium carrots or something like that. So we were kind of teasing and laughing about it. And even before the Zuzu's event was announced, she and I joked that one day she and I had to make a pilgrimage to Zuzu's for a bingo night or a comedy night and share the carrot lox toast. So I believe you decided to have a late lunch at Zuzu's that day. So tell me what you ordered and walk me through that process.
So I got the blue, like the iced blue matcha
Okay.
latte or something, and it was fine.
Okay.
Um, Not much to report on that, but of course I had to get the infamous carrot toast.
Okay.
And I will say, from just a business perspective, they're killing it on the food cost. I mean, like my review on that is it's a piece of toast, a literal slice of bread toasted with a very thin veneer of vegan cream cheese
Okay.
and carrot and capers. And what I hadn't realized is there's dill on it, which is like a food aversion for like one of my only food aversions, and it's
Okay.
like my kryptonite basically.
Right.
So I took the bite and I was like, oh no, I don't know that I can give it a proper assessment due to that.
And
But I mean, it is straightforward, exactly what we saw it to be on the Goldbelly site.
sure. And so okay, appreciating that you don't love dill, but from my perspective, I think you and I can both agree that dill would be a logical ingredient. If you think of salmon lox on bread and cream
Yeah.
cheese, dill is a very common
It's a
flavor.
decent
It makes
vegan
sense.
approximation
Yeah.
of that. However, like there is what I noted, a bagel shop literally right next door to
Okay.
Madame Zuzu's. And I'm like thinking, I don't know if they're in some kind of like feud with the bagel shop, but why not like merge with them on this and like sell it sort of more like New York style on a bagel at least? Because that's how what I would think of for
Right.
And that's like super nitpicky, but like if we're gonna deep dive into the freaking carrot toast, why not mention that element at
Sure.
least?
No, that's super funny. So the carrots, I think you mentioned to me as well, they were basically thinly shaved carrots. They tasted like a little bit of acidity was added to them, like pickled or marinated
Yeah,
in some.
maybe a quick pickle or something
Okay.
along those lines.
So you didn't, again, your point is you couldn't have a fair assessment because there was an ingredient on it that you didn't love, which again is fair enough. What did your husband think about it?
He gave it a number rating.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready for this number rating. What did Rob say?
He flat out gave it a 2 out of 10. And my husband is not a picky eater. Like he likes to eat.
Yeah.
And I felt kind of bad when he said that. But it is what it is. And like for me personally, if the dill hadn't been sort of an obstacle, I would have eaten it because I was coming off of like a 3-day juice fast. So I was starving.
Right.
And the fact that I just like left it on the plate, I don't know. But I did end up getting their like famous cookie.
Oh
I
yeah.
think they put the kitchen sink cookie or something with the pretzels and like vegan chocolate or whatever.
And how was the cookie?
It was like devoid of the kitchen sink. Let's put it that way. There was like nothing in it. It was
They
it
are
was
maximizing the food cost, or actually minimizing their food cost for every product that they put out. It sounds like.
I justified it as like maybe I just got a bunk cookie because like I bake often and it's like sometimes things aren't equally distributed within the batter. I don't know. I can't. I
Well,
would have to order the $100 12 pack off Gold Belly to make a proper assessment on that one, but
for sure, for sure. That's actually really funny. Then
and on that note, I just want to say that like I want a list of names of people that have ordered Madame Zuzu's on Gold Belly so I can like submit it to the FBI and have them put on a watch list because that just seems like a bit extreme, but to each their own, I guess.
you know what? Like I said, I applaud the creativity. I applaud the intention behind what they're trying to create. An intention versus execution are two different things. And again, there could be a lot of factors at play, right? Like, if
This
there's
was just a moment in time. Like maybe everything else is great. So I'm not like, and I agree. For just a vegan tea shop,
yeah,
go off.
it's a great idea. Yeah, I do love it in that regard. So, and then I think the other thing you did try, and they did promote this, was that they had done a collab with a local brewery to do a Siamese Dream beer with some kind of logo on the can or something like that. Now I don't drink, so I don't really like beer. So I think you tried that as well.
Yeah, we tried that, and I thought it was like the best thing that I had there. It was really good.
So
I mean,
what type? Like, was it a specific type of beer?
it was, I think, a double IPA, which is, I guess, because I'm basic, like the exact kind of beer, kind of like a citrusy, hoppy IPA.
Okay,
That's like exactly what I like. So of course I enjoyed it, but
cool. So then now that we're wrapping up kind of the afternoon portion of it, I know that at one point, you had to clear out because they set up. So talk about how
but
that
we missed the big event because as Rob and I were sitting there with this like partially consumed carrot toast in front of us, I kind of just like got this weird feeling and I looked right over and in that moment Billy was entering the building like an angel in a blue bucket hat just like appeared. Um I didn't really expect Billy to show up because I thought he would just show up like after it had closed and
right.
not like really make an appearance before the show, but so that was interesting.
And what was he doing? Was he interacting with the staff? Was he interacting with the fans, or was he just kind of observing from the corner, or what was kind of going on?
I think he was just starting like the process of getting the stage or the equipment in order and all of that. So I didn't like say anything or like
right
up to him in that moment because it's like I'm not gonna
right.
impose like that, but it was a nice touch.
Cool. All right. So then at that point, everybody got cleared out. You went back to the hotel. You guys got ready. There was the 6 p.m. set and then ultimately the 9 p.m. set. So while I was sitting at home, watching, or I guess waiting for the set to start, you had kind of texted me. You just kind of got there. You got there kind of right after doors had opened. Um, what was the vibe like, I guess, as you kind of walked in, and how were you feeling leading up to the show?
I was like weirdly nervous, excited. Everybody was sort of like buzzing with excitement, just milling around. Um, and it struck me how really like small and intimate of a show it was.
Right.
Just based on like when you see the seats arranged and everything like that. So I knew it was gonna be a special event. Like obviously I knew that anyway, but it was yeah.
That's awesome. And that's exciting, right? Because again, it is a once in a blue moon type of event at Zuzu in a very commemorative moment. So I'm glad you got, at least you felt that and it was palpable.
Yeah. And I will say, they're trying to recreate this iconic event that um was a real moment in history for them. And I definitely think that they succeeded in recreating that vibe because it did feel like I was in that real time witnessing another iconic moment that maybe this will be a sort of infamous point in the band's history as time goes on.
I love that for you. And I love that you're able to feel that. And to even hear you articulated in that way is great. I'm actually really, I'm glad you got to experience that. And again, if I weren't able to go, I'm glad you were able to be there to
I
experience.
do wish you had been there so bad though. Like I will say that was the one thing I wish you could have
I know.
experienced that alongside us,
But I did experience it in real time with you, just not sitting next to you, I guess. Yeah. So then the live stream started basically right on time. And it started with, I think it was probably about a 10 or 15 minute, I guess you could call it a documentary where Billy, Jimmy, and James all were interviewed and were kind of talking about the record, talking about that moment in time. There was a lot of archival footage, and the production value was actually quite high for this like little documentary that they had done before. And I remember texting you at the time saying, "Hey, are you guys getting to watch this too?" And I guess you guys didn't, so you would have had to watch it after. But then after the documentary played, the band walked out and they started the set. And one thing we talked about even before the show, before it happened, was how faithful of a recreation of the set would it be, right? Like, would Billy actually be wearing his, a 666 shirt or a super slut shirt, or would James dye his hair again, or would they play the exact set as it was, or if they add extra songs? But yeah, go ahead, Jesse. You're going to say something?
No, it was stupid. I was just saying, I wish that James would have dyed his hair because I'm ready to bring chunky highlights back, but
So then they started the set, and they ended up, I'm going to say, staying relatively true to form by recreating the set. They made a couple of changes. So they didn't play anything from Gish, and I think Billy even commented on that by saying that they really just wanted to focus on Siamese Dream during this time. And then they added Space Boy and Spaced to the set list that wasn't originally on the set list during the original performance. And then they did Persnickety as well at the very end. So the set list ended up being Rocket, Cherub Rock, Today, Disarm, Space Boy, Spaced, Mayonnaise, Hummer, Luna, and Persnickety. And now that I say that out loud, I also think Luna was added on this show that wasn't played.
so, and I was like extremely happy to have Luna and Space Boy added.
Yeah. So, like we don't need to go through this one by track or anything like that. But, from my perspective, I think it was a really great show. I think Billy needed a couple songs to get his vocal fully kind of warmed up. But other than that, they were tight. They performed well. They looked happy. There was good banter. I think the performance of Mayonnaise is one of the best that the band has ever done. The set list was good. You had Jimmy play guitar at one point. Like, it was overall my response to the set was very positive. How do you feel?
I agree. The overall vibe of the band was amazing. It was like you could just sense it, that they all were kind of having a moment. I had like my basic bitch moment as a fan, and I actually felt like euphoria listening to Mayonnaise, and I'm not like one of the bros that's gonna yell that at every show and be obnoxious about it. So yeah, it just the whole thing, it was like a special moment.
Right.
Um
And I think the biggest thing was Billy seemed so at peace about it too, right? Because, and as we talked about a little earlier, there has been a little bit of an antagonistic kind of view on the record. Billy has very much spent many years trying to overcome that nostalgia factor, playing Oceania all the way through on tour, not wanting to do a greatest hits tour, et cetera, et cetera. And then I feel like he's at this time where in that moment, in that context with those people, it was the right moment to be very positively celebratory about that era in time.
yeah, like it's been long enough. And also this album was a huge accomplishment for him. Like I understand the feeling of sort of resentment of being maybe pigeonholed into that moment as an artist and wanting to evolve, but yet, it's a lot of mixed emotions, I would imagine, for him. But just seeing him be able to, like you said, sort of, it was like a moment of acceptance and like celebration coming from
Right.
him on this album. Funnily enough, there was a moment where he like I guess asked for requests from the audience, and somebody like yelled out something from Melancholy, and he like told them to shut the fuck up or something, like jokingly.
Right.
But that was kind of a funny irony, I thought.
It was great. So there were a couple of, exciting kind of moments that happened throughout the set as well. I think, to talk about some of them, I thought it was great, to see James actually look very happy. He was singing a lot.
Has been lately, like in general, even when I saw them for the World is a Vampire tour, I think we both noted that James seemed really to be in a good place with where things are with the band. And again, like that repeated for this.
So that was great. Jeff didn't say a thing. Jack didn't say a thing. Katie Cole was brought on to do vocals on Spaceboy, I believe. And then Jimmy again played guitar on Persnickety. So there's lots of, again, everything about it was really special for those kind of moments. The banter was, there were some cool moments. You mentioned the Melancholy thing. Billy was teasing James about TikTok for a while, which was pretty funny.
The number one thing was the sort of unexpected shout out to Darcy.
That's correct.
Not inappropriate, however, was unexpected and sort of maybe a humbling moment for
I agree.
for Billy, noting or like, just taking note of all of the past drama and such.
I agree.
But she was very much a part of this era that they're celebrating. So
that was great. And I agree. I think that was a little bit out of left field for me. And I think you and I both, we had joked, like, do you like when we recorded our preview episode, whether or not Darcy was getting a call at that exact moment, but I guess not. But again, great for that to be acknowledged. And then the other moment of banter that I think was both maybe a little bit out of left field, and exciting and heartwarming was that he had announced that the day before that set, he and Chloe got married.
yeah, that was like, I don't know, that was a great moment, I guess, to bear witness to. I'm really happy for them. And
yeah, and I think I agree. I'm very happy.
It is very much like Billy, I will say, and he did call himself out on it. that he got married like the night prior to doing this event. And I think he like mentioned asking Chloe if that was okay and whatnot, but that was in character, I think.
Very on brand for sure. To do those things one after the other. So I agree with you, especially now that there have been a couple of days removed, and there was a pretty, I'm going to say, a detailed Vogue magazine coverage of the wedding, lots of photos. Both Chloe and Billy posted like little clips of behind the scenes moments of Billy giving his vows. Lots of really beautiful moments. And again, I'm very happy for the man. As much as yes, there are antagonistic moments between him and his fans. At the end of the day, we're all human. And I do love the man and want him to be happy. And I feel like he's at a very, very good place, based on the way that it has been shared with the world.
And I was surprised how much was shared
I agree.
because, when it comes to matters like that in the past, Billy has been very private, but I think they just really wanted to celebrate the moment.
Yep.
And it was a beautiful wedding. I'm not like really a wedding girl. Like I eloped and I don't generally give a shit about that, but I did find it very tasteful. And I thought Chloe's dress, which her dad designed, was perfect for her and very pretty.
Yep.
What did you I know you're not like a fashion person.
Sure.
What were your thoughts on Billy's outfit though? Because like that's what I want to just like touch on for a moment.
So it gave me very Machina era vibes in terms of the outfit. And it was kind of this like skirt dress kind of thing. It wasn't a tuxedo. It wasn't a pair of tuxedo pants. But it was a very traditional, I'm going to call it tuxedo jacket with the tuxedo shirt and I think you called it the Colonel Sanders bow tie. So that part was very traditional, and I think it actually was fitted to him quite nicely. Jury's out for me about the pant skirt thing.
I no joke expected him fully to wear a skirt, so that wasn't even a shock at all, and I was like living for it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put a dark cloud over their special day, but I just wish in terms of the top that it would have gone there a little bit, like you said. I know this is just me being ridiculous and who cares, but I wish he would have gone a little more over the top with maybe like a Machina era corset or something. But I guess he just didn't want to upstage Chloe. So it was like a nice mix of traditional on top, kind of like a mullet, like where it's like party in the back and whatever. So yeah, traditional on the top half and then like the signature skirt on the bottom.
Right. So yeah, so and again, I'm very, very happy for both of them. So congratulations to them. The one thing I will say, and I think that multiple people maybe have commented on this, the one maybe uncomfortable moment for me as a viewer, were maybe some of the comments that he had made during the set about the wedding and about the age gap between him and Chloe. Now, again, age is nothing but a number, and knowing me for 15 years, know that I don't date within my direct age group either, and I've dated people kind of swinging multiple years both ways as well. So that's not even what I'm commenting on or judging or anything like that, but just it was a joke, and it was a self-deprecating joke, but talking about him being old enough to be her dad, and her being 1 year old when
went on a little long. Like I will say that I was there, and even like my husband was kind of like, "What the fuck?" But
Chloe was 1 year old when I wrote this record. Like I'm like, like
yeah, it maybe went a little too far, but I did think it was like you said a little bit of self-deprecating humor, and I don't know, maybe he felt the need to address the elephant in the room, which I honestly don't give a shit about the age gap. I feel like Chloe is a really good partner for him. I mean, from what we've seen, she seems great for him and they're happy. So it sort of is what it is. But I feel you on the awkwardness of it. I just kind of thought it was funny.
Fair enough.
But I could see why some might be like raise an eyebrow to that, I guess. But it was also kind of just another classic awkward Billy moment.
Mhm. And
So no judgment really on
right.
my part.
Yep, exactly. Okay, and then the final banter related thing that so they were going to make an announcement, and then Billy teased the announcement and asked James if he should make an announcement now or later, and then they decided later. So it was an announcement of an announcement of an announcement or something like that.
Which is standard form
Standard
for
form,
the band.
absolutely. And then ultimately, what they announced was a limited run 12-inch mayonnaise maxi single in collaboration with Universal, which thanks Universal, we've been asking for the machinery issue for 10 years, but all we get is a 12-inch mayonnaise single, but whatever. So on the A side,
I think it's been more than a decade, Chris. Like, I think it's been longer than that on the machinery issue. Like, we don't have to go into that now, but yeah, it's been
a while, but hey, we get the mayonnaise single. So the 666 mayo jar, which is now reflective of the show poster, the t-shirt, the tote, was also the album art for the 12-inch maxi single.
I
So
didn't even know that. And I'm just kind of like, I guess the satanic mayo jar is just an icon of the band now. Like, but against my will, but what say do I have in it really? I'm like kind of blown away that that's the cover of that, but
and so then side A is just the album version of Mayonnaise, and side B is the Euphoria version of it. An acoustic performance they had. It's a 12-inch pressing, 45 RPM, should be high fidelity vinyl. It's quite exciting. And they announced that it was available for purchase right away. So then you had however many people that were watching the live stream at the time. I think you said the people that were in attendance didn't get any advance warning. So you guys didn't even actually get a chance to really buy it. There were 1,000 copies available. 100 of them were signed and 900 of them were not. And so I was sitting there refreshing, and I hit add to cart as soon as it was available. And by the time I got to the checkout, the autograph copies had sold out. So I'm guessing there were probably tens of thousands of people that converged on it. So I wasn't able to get a signed copy, but I did get an unsigned copy. So I'm excited. I got one of those. And I think it was limit one or something. So like they ended up basically selling within a few minutes. So so that was kind of the kind of all the announcements.
what do you think about that? Like for me, that kind of just went over my head because I mean, I was just like in the moment, and I'm not like a vinyl person. Like I'm not like a rabid collector or anything like that. But what do you think about that particular spotlight being placed on the song Mayonnaise, which I feel like in the battle between Billy and the Siamese zombies, that particular song sort of like it might be a trigger. You know what I mean? That's the song for a
Well,
lot of people.
yeah, and I think that it's a very complicated relationship, right? Because I mean, it is a song. So then maybe just to also talk about some other factors, in the kind of lead up to the song, Billy talked about the kind of intro part that James had written and that he had given him the demo, and then over the years, there were some, I'm going to call it negative feelings that Billy had towards the song, right? Like during the If All Goes Wrong DVD, he had talked about how, well, James only wrote that one part but it's my song and everybody says the song is great because of James. And there was that kind of drama that went around that. And then he did play it and then he didn't play it. And then fans. So yeah, there's this kind of, I'm going to say a very complex emotional kind of element to it. But the one thing that I think, got him to this point of acceptance and peace, I think is twofold. I think one, he did kind of tell the story about how the label did consider it for a single at a point in time. They had put together a radio edit version of it that they didn't know had happened. And that this was their way to kind of honor that legacy of the fact that this should or could have been a single of the time. So I think that was part of the rationale. And then the other part of it is, yeah, this idea of, to your point, of fan service and to honor the song because it is a great song. It's a song that means a lot within the fandom, means a lot within the legacy, and means a lot within the history of the band, right? It's one of a handful of songs where it's a James and Billy co-write, right? So, and especially now that him and James are in such a good place, and James is in such it just seemed right for the first time, I think.
I feel like, yeah, maybe they've come to a place where it's water under the bridge for them.
Right?
James was at the wedding. We were unsure there for a moment, but then it was confirmed. And
Where that would be
yeah,
if it was James, just fly in on Sunday. Don't worry about Saturday. You're not. Could you?
that would have been a mess, but that was not the case. So
Yeah. So I just think maybe it was the right time. So
yeah.
yeah. So then when you kind of look at it in tandem, it just seemed like the right time. But one thing I want to talk about, this might be a hard pivot here. Is there anything, sorry, before I go into talking about merch pricing, is there anything else we want to talk about the show or the set itself?
Maybe at the end, let's do your pivot and see where that goes.
So my pivot right now. So one thing you and I have talked about is, again, Billy is over the past many number of years has monetized his autograph, right? And I can appreciate and understand that, right? It's there's nothing wrong with that conceptually. If people it's supply and demand. If people are willing to buy it, sell it. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. But what I will say is that the value, or rather the price of the autograph has gone up with inflation quite heavily. And the more autographs exist out in the world, it also then deflates the value of it a little bit as well, right? So just for some context, the unsigned Mayonnaise 12-inch maxi single was $30. The signed version with just Billy's signature, by the way, James's signature is not on it, which I think is actually a misstep on this part. I think it would make a lot of sense for James, at least James, if not James and Jimmy, to also sign the Mayo a single.
I would say it should have been James and Billy, especially given, the contention about the songwriting credits and who did what and all of that. That kind of would have been.
But it made sense, right? But just the Billy signed version is $225. So, or yeah, 220, I think, or 225. So you think about that. Essentially, Billy's autograph in this instance is priced at an incremental $190, $195, which, again, I don't know if that's fair or not. What's your initial reaction to a $200 Billy autograph?
See, you have more of like a collector's mentality than I do when it comes to these things. So while I do think it's like interesting to note, I don't have like that much of an opinion on it. I think from a business perspective, if that's what he wants to charge and people are willing to pay for it, then go for it, I guess. I mean,
yeah, and maybe that's fair. Maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit. But to me, it seemed like a lot.
Maybe. I don't really have a point of comparison though, because this band is the only like band that I would really even be aware of pricing on these things really. So I don't really know how to contrast it with anything else or if this is like outlandish or normal.
And that's fair enough. But then the most interesting part of this pricing comparison, though, is that the Mayonnaise posters. So on the posters, they were signed by by all three of the original kind of band members, so Billy, James, and Jimmy. And the way the pricing and the math worked out is that if you use the pricing, and this is the accountant in me doing this math, if you use the pricing of Billy's autograph on the Mayo single as the baseline price of what a Billy autograph is, that means that James and Jimmy are getting $50 each for their autograph on the poster. That's how all that math shakes out. So
which we had wondered, how the division played out previously. So if we're going on these metrics, that's how it plays out.
That's how it plays out. And
how do you feel? Like for me,
yes,
I am like a Billy stan. I mean, I feel like it's not unfair that he would
Yep.
take the lion's share of that. Like he is kind of the iconic force behind the band, not to diminish the role of the other band members in any way, but
Right. And again, I don't know what point I'm necessarily trying to make here. Like I'm not criticizing it. I'm not I'm just more so it's one of those things that make you go, like that's really all it is to me. I was just like, again, being the accountant in me, I'm just like, yeah, I know that. Oh, okay. So James is getting $50. All right. Well, and then to your point, at $325 a pop for the poster, there were 100 posters on sale that were signed. That's 32 grand of gross sales right there. Right. And that's it's not a bad day for Madame Zuzu's.
it's really not. But also, if you think about it, like I doubt that Jimmy and James are involved in the day to day. Like I'm sure Billy was mostly behind the planning and all of that of this event, the merch and everything. And likely they showed up to rehearse for the show and slapped some
Yep.
signatures down.
Yep.
So that's kind of my thought on it.
I completely agree with that. I would just love to know the economics behind it because again, I'm just more nosy and curious and it's what I do for a living. So, but okay. So any kind of final thoughts about this Siamese Dream 30th anniversary weekend?
Well, it was a strangely emotional ride, in like a number of ways. I'm really happy as a fan that I got to experience that and be there for this moment because as, a few days have now passed, like almost a week. Um, it's like hit me, especially seeing sort of the fan reactions online and stuff after the fact that this was a really like a moment of note, I think, in the band's history. And it's hard to kind of see that in the moment. Like, I was there for the Asheville residencies, and sure, it was really exciting because the band was reforming and there was a new album. But it didn't really hit until after the fact, like, whoa, I was there for that. And I feel like in the future, this might like be sort of a comparable event.
Sure. And I think that that's a great point. I think the band, or at least Billy, has done a lot over the years to find kind of different spaces and ideas to serve different levels of fan needs, right? And I think to your point, Asheville was a very specific a very specific type of event. This anniversary show is a very specific event, very different than the In Plain Song tours versus the Cotillions tour versus the Shining and Oh So Bright tour versus the World is a Vampire tour, right? Like each one of those has a different place and a different target and a different strategy, if you want to call it that. And I think that, yeah, especially knowing that 250 and or so people got to experience what you experienced in real time, that's something special that you get to hold kind of forever. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and you were like, "Oh, any final thoughts?" And it would kind of be inauthentic if I didn't sort of throw out the note that um both of us have been in this fan community for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Quite a long time. We have seen a lot of things play out within that community.
Yes.
And it's what I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but just briefly, it's a little bit disheartening
Okay.
that an element for me of going to this, aside from the obvious excitement, was sort of a little bit of dread, just like knowing sort of like what type of fan and who was like likely to show up, and that that's something I would have to deal with because I think a lot of us were drawn to this band and connected to this band because of a sort of maybe feeling of alienation, I guess, within our own lives. And it's sort of sad to feel like I've had to sort of like disconnect myself in a self-imposed way from the majority of the fan community due to some like level of toxicity that's just at this time in my life it reached kind of like a zenith, I feel.
Right. I think you raise a very interesting point, and I think that it's an unfortunate irony, right? Is that, we are all essentially a band of misfits. Like, let's be clear on this, right? Like an intense Smashing Pumpkins fan connects with this band because of, exactly to your point, those feelings of alienation and isolation, and I'm sure there are elements of depression and self-harm and all of these things that we are drawn to Billy, that he's spoken very openly about, because there's an element that we can relate to. And then the irony is that you get this band of misfits together, and that we haven't necessarily been able to unite, and it's actually caused significant fracture. And I know what you mean. Like, I've also reached a point in my just general life cycle where I'm in my 30s now, and ain't nobody got time for that shit anymore. And like, when I was in my 20s, I was so active on the message boards and everything, and I co-ran a fan site for a while, and we were doing podcasts and running Twitters and doing all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, I don't want to hear this anymore. And I think that this idea of the toxic fandom is very much a thing, right? There's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of, you're not a true enough fan. You're not a good, I need to compete over how many shows I went to versus how many shows you went to. And it's a level of negativity that I try to keep an arm's length from.
And the factioning off and sort of bullying behind the scenes while maintaining this facade of being sort of like the face of fandom with some of these people. Like, I just am a person that has a very low threshold for bullshit and bullshitters in general. And so when people that I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I'm certainly not talking about every fan or whatnot, but, certain people show up with a smile and all of that. And I'm thinking, well, I know what goes on behind the scenes. I know what goes on in the online community, and yeah. For some people, like, you're standing there and you want to kind of like put on this facade, but yeah, I've seen you literally threatening assault on a person because they caught a pick that you felt, like a guitar pick, a piece of plastic that you felt was meant for you. So it's just sort of that element that it's kind of like, I'm over it. And maybe because I feel like this often, I don't see it discussed really. And I'm not sure because you and I know several people who have just straight up fallen off the radar, fallen out of the fandom, specifically because of the experiences that they've had to deal with in this regard, So I don't know if it's just the people that have been affected in this way have largely fallen off, or why there's like very little public or visible discourse on this topic, but maybe that's something that we could touch on more later, possibly.
Yeah, I feel like, as a final thought, this is not just a final thought. This is an hour-long episode discussion, but I will just leave this thought on exactly what you described as. There was one person in particular that you and I were both very close with. I'm going to say probably about 10 years ago. And they had gone through a very traumatic experience where they were doxxed. They had death threats that were levied against them, and ultimately led to them completely falling off of the fandom. And I reconnected with them recently, actually, and which was great, but I hadn't spoken to them in years for that reason, because they needed, for their own protection of their own physical safety, they needed to remove themselves from the fandom. And the individuals that did that to them are the ones that you're going to walk around and smile and cozy up to Billy, right? So that's a really scary thought. But I think I'm glad that you didn't succumb to any of that negativity, despite the fact that you and I both know that the likelihood of that type of person being in attendance to that show that you were at was very high.
And yeah, and that was accurate. But like I said, that could be a whole episode.
Will be.
But to end it on a more positive note, just overall, I was really thrilled to see the band in top form. Billy was like glowing. He was like very clearly happy. And that's always great to see.
Yeah.
And I thought his voice sounded amazing. Like, I think we've touched on this in a past episode, but every time I see them, I'm like, oh, his voice sounds better than ever. And I believe like I took the opportunity to like shit on Axl Rose randomly to like raise Billy up. But yeah, just a lot of like people his age in his profession have really declined, and I'm very happy that that they're in the form that they're in. I'm proud of the band, and it's a good thing to see, a great thing to see.
I agree. So on that note, I think that should probably wrap up this week's episode. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Hope you enjoyed our little live in-person, first-person account of the Siamese Dream 30th anniversary weekend. Thank you very much, and wish you well. Signing off.
Bye.